Welcome back to Healthy Not Complicated. Today we are tackling a topic that's highly controversial all over social media and a little bit personal to me, which is the carnivore diet. If you're online at all, I'm sure you've come across it. An influencer, usually someone who's looking incredibly lean, very energized, and they're making these big claims that they have the answer to all of your health problems, better skin, easy weight loss, less inflammation. And they're always talking about something extreme. In this case, it's eating only meat. Now, I need to start this episode with full transparency. I was once in that camp. I'd been eating keto for a while, I had great results, and I started hearing about the carnivore diet, about how people were getting even more benefits than they saw from keto. Issues with their autoimmune disease, inflammation, arthritis, weight loss, clear skin. The list went on and on and on. And I was curious. Now, this must have been around 2018, maybe 2019. It was definitely before COVID, but there was a time where I was fully carnivore. I followed it strictly, and I completely understand why the idea of it is so captivating. It promises a magical solution through radical simplicity. And honestly, the initial results were good. I did feel really great. It was a huge, exciting change. And it was very simple, which we're gonna get to in this video, can be a pro, but also a con. Now, I'm a little bit scared to say this, but today is an expose, a peek behind the curtain, if you will. Because the truth is the carnivore diet effective? Yeah, you can get really good results. At the end of the day, it is an elimination diet, but there is another side to it. And there is a reason why you see so many influencers promoting it online. And unfortunately, it doesn't come down to helping people. It doesn't come down to long-term health for that individual. It comes down to the algorithm. And as someone who has promoted the carnivore diet online, who has seen the benefits in the algorithm from promoting it, I do feel like I'm qualified to speak about this. Now, let's take a moment to be fair. There are people who have seen tremendous results from the carnivore diet. I'm not knocking the diet itself. Clearer skin, better digestion, less bloating, easier weight loss. I'm not saying everyone who is promoting this is necessarily lying. Those things do happen for a lot of people. But the question is, why are they happening? It's not magic. Yeah, it's simple, but it's a controlled metabolic process that's happening. Most of the benefits of the carnivore diet come down to it being an elimination diet. It's one of the most powerful total elimination diets you can do. By stripping out everything, all sugar, all carbs, all grains, all fruit, all vegetables, all nuts, all seeds, you are, by default, cutting out just about anything that can cause inflammation, from a diet perspective at least. Instantly cut out all refined sugar and processed vegetable oils, which are in basically all processed food. These are highly inflammatory, and most people are eating a lot of them. And for people who are sensitive to things like oxalates or gluten, yeah, you're cutting all of that out. This diet gives your system a total reset. And that reduction in inflammation alone is why people feel so good when they initially switch to this way of eating. Your body is getting a break from the modern food system, which has a lot of inflammatory foods. Now, there's also a bit more of a metabolic effect happening here, though. The carnivore diet works because it takes two critical steps for our metabolism. The first is that by default, it is extremely low in carbohydrates, if it includes any at all. Meat has 0 carbohydrates. It has 0 sugar. Some animal foods, some seafood, some eggs have trace amount of carbs, but not enough to make any meaningful impact on your blood sugar or your insulin levels. And the impact of eating a very, very low carbohydrate diet is that you won't experience any blood sugar spikes from food. And as a result, not a lot of insulin is needed, and your insulin sensitivity can improve. Your body is able to burn fat more efficiently. Now, the reason this matters is because most people nowadays have some level of insulin resistance, even if their blood sugar looks normal. It's estimated that up to 88% of Americans have some level of insulin resistance. That is the overwhelming majority. So it's no surprise that by eating in a way that improves your insulin sensitivity, people feel better. The second good thing that's working in your favor for your metabolism is the carnivore diet is high in protein. There's no way to avoid that. As long as you're eating enough food in total, you are easily hitting your protein target for each day. This is gonna help with satiety, cravings. This is gonna help your body to repair faster. Again, all things that are gonna make you feel pretty great. So in theory, carnivore is a pretty good short-term reset. There's no denying that. It can be great for your metabolism, especially if you have insulin resistance, which, like I said, most people do. But if it offers such clear benefits, then why did I stop? And why am I doing this podcast episode today? Why is this not the advice that I give to my clients now? It's because the transition from a metabolic reset tool into a permanent lifestyle is where the carnivore diet breaks down. The reality is that the carnivore diet is really strict. I know people will be in the comments telling me there are so many options, there's so many types of meat and seafood and different foods you can make. There's carnivore cookbooks out there. You can make anything carnivore. Okay, sure. But the problem is when you're in this online bubble, people make everything seem easy. Just beautiful pictures of ground beef and steak forever. But that's not the reality of living in the real world. Being that rigid is honestly exhausting. And I know people are gonna try to argue with me in the comments, but it's the truth. You have to make a conscious effort every single day. You need to be constantly thinking about food in order to follow a carnivore diet long term. And we need to be talking about the mental toll. This diet demands an all or nothing mentality. Anyone who follows the carnivore diet has to make it their whole personality. Because let's face it, food is a huge part of everyone's life. We need it to survive, obviously, but it's also the source of family gatherings, of parties, of celebrations. A lot of events spent with friends and family do revolve around food. Maybe it shouldn't be the center, but there is a balance here. I know a lot of people say that they want to live in a world where food is only fuel and doesn't have any other, social scenarios tied to it, but that's not the reality. What? Are you gonna go through life never going to a birthday party, never eating out at a restaurant, never celebrating a milestone with a nice dinner with friends and family, without having to caveat it with, I only eat steak, or I'm not eating there? Sure, that might work for a small minority of people, and that might be the people that we see most often online, people who are telling us it's easy, who are showing us how we can make all these different animal foods into all these different recipes, telling us that we should be able to follow it, that we have no excuse. But what does this do? This just makes everyone feel guilty who isn't able to stick to it. When you're traveling for work, when your best friend invites you over for their birthday, when you're simply grabbing a quick dinner with friends, you're constantly having to explain, constantly apologize, often having to bring your own food. And that kind of social isolation and rigid mentality is what makes getting healthy complicated. And if I've learned anything as a nutritionist from my own experience, from working with clients, from being in this online space, it's that complicated health is unsustainable health. And this comes down to one core concept. Adherence is a huge piece of the puzzle and one that we can't ignore. I've always maintained that the best diet for you is one that makes you feel good and that you're able to stick to. That isn't difficult, that doesn't feel like a chore or restriction, one that you aren't counting down the days till you're done. Now, I actually did a YouTube short recently where I was rating different diets for insulin resistance, and the carnivore diet was one that I rated. I think I gave it a 6 out of 10. And I said, it's not good because it's not a plan people can stick to. And the comments were an amazing example of the defensive, rigid mindset that this bubble creates. People were claiming it was easy. People were telling me they'd been on carnivore for 5 years, etc. They were saying that there's a difference between whether a diet is effective and whether you can stick to it. But does it really? Because if there was the perfect diet that absolutely nobody could stick to, then what is the point? If your whole life revolves around white knuckling through, around making sure that every single thing you eat follows this rigid framework, if you're constantly having to think about it, if you're constantly having to explain yourself, then what else are you doing with your time? Are you enjoying your life? Your goal should be to set up a system that's easy to sustain. Even when your discipline inevitably dips. Because that's the thing, right? We can't maintain discipline every single day forever. There are going to be times when it goes down. And in those cases, you want to build habits that you are able to stick to. This kind of extreme restriction doesn't teach you habits. It doesn't teach you how to problem solve and make good choices when you're outside of your home. It teaches you how to ignore cravings until you inevitably fail. And when you fail, you often binge, the weight comes back. Again, it comes down to this all or nothing mindset. You blame yourself, you feel guilty, you feel bad, you feel like you failed. When the truth is, health isn't linear and it's not black and white. There aren't 100% good foods and 100% bad foods. Everything falls on a spectrum. You can always make better choices than you probably made, but you can also make worse ones. You don't want to get stuck in this terrible crash diet cycle. That's devastating for both your metabolism and your mental health. And this failure cycle leads us to the core point I want to make in this episode. If the diet is so hard to stick to long term, then why are so many influencers promoting it as the one and only way? Even years after the initial craze should have faded. Now, people aren't going to want to hear this, but the reason comes down to economics. It's governed by the engine that runs our world, the algorithm. It all comes down to clicks and engagement. And the truth is, extremes get clicks. The algorithm on all platforms, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, they all work more or less the same way. They want people to stay on their platform. They want people to be watching and engaging with their content. So anything that generates a reaction, anything that gets people to watch longer, to click on the video, to share it, to comment, that does better in the algorithm. That gets pushed out to more people. And that means that extreme takes, one way or another, vegan diet, carnivore diet, water fasting, anything that's very extreme and anything that anyone is selling as the one and only way or just making a big claim over, that's what gets engagement. And that's why you see so much of it online. If I post a video saying eat less processed food, a broad claim which more or less everyone knows, I might get 10 short comments saying, thanks, Kait. Appreciate what you do, good information. But if I post a video where I say all vegetables are bad, the only food we need to eat is meat, I'm gonna get 500 comments, either agreeing with me strongly or disagreeing with me strongly. Probably a mix of the two. When people are more passionate, they're more likely to comment. The algorithm sees this content as captivating and it pushes it out to more people. And that's the fundamental math that influencers rely on. Anything that gets more engagement, that's the content we're told to make more of. And that makes sense. From a purely views and statistics standpoint, it's benefiting both parties, the platform and the influencer, if the influencer is able to get more views. And this is where there's a disconnect, because the reality of what most people need to do in order to get healthy, stay healthy, maintain their results, frankly, it's boring. Eat enough protein, limit processed food, limit sugar, get enough sleep, get daily movement. This advice is flexible. It's repeatable. It allows room for you to live your life. And because it's flexible, it's not really a hot take. It's not as captivating. It's not as extreme. It's not going to stop people immediately from scrolling. And it's not going to be pushed out to as many people. It's why it shows up less frequently on your feed. And this creates a terrible social media trap, where influencers become more focused on getting views, getting engagement, the whole social media cycle, as opposed to actually trying to help people improve their health. Now, don't get me wrong, there is definitely a balance here. I definitely play the social media game to some extent. I have to have some extreme takes in order to draw viewers in order to hook people in the first place. But since my time eating a carnivore diet, I've realized that the nutrition advice that people need and that's gonna help the most people, it's not extreme. And it can be flexible. Carbs are not the enemy. They do have a place if you eat them right. Carbs aren't the enemy, or they don't have to be. Yes, there is some nuance here. Obviously, limiting carbs, being smart about carbs, that is beneficial for weight loss, for insulin resistance, for blood sugar, for most people. But again, it comes down to it not being all or nothing. So we've established that extreme diets are not the ideal, but they are rewarded by the algorithm. So let's switch gears and talk a little bit more about what your ultimate health goal should be. What does true lasting health actually look like? It really comes down to metabolic flexibility. This means your body can efficiently switch from using carbohydrates for energy, which is a quick energy source, to using fat, which is slower burning. And this includes both the fat you eat and also your stored body fat. A restrictive diet like carnivore forces your body into a fat burning state. And like we spoke about, that can have a lot of benefits. And a lot of people who are eating a standard American diet, who have been eating a lot of processed food, they have lost the ability to burn fat for energy. Now, not lost it permanently. This is something you can rebuild. The end goal shouldn't be to be in a fat burning state long term. You don't have to be in ketosis, in deep ketosis long term. You should be able to spend some time during the day in a fed state where your body is using glucose from your meal, and a fasted state where your body is using mainly fat. And you shouldn't feel terrible in either situation, because that's what happens when a lot of people eat carnivore is they end up saying that they eat any carbs and they feel so terrible. So why would they go back to that? That's not ideal, and you shouldn't feel that way. You should be able to use both fuel sources efficiently. Now look, the other part to this is you need to do what works for you. So if you are eating carnivore and you feel fantastic and you find that it is very easy to stick to, you don't have any issue with social situations, anything like that, keep doing what you're doing. If you're progressing towards your goals, if your blood sugar is where it should be, if you're losing weight, if you're feeling good. But if that isn't you, and this doesn't just go for carnivore, this goes for any way of eating. If what you're doing isn't making you feel good, if it doesn't feel easy enough to stick to, if you're not getting the results that you're looking for, if you're not progressing towards your goals, then it's time to make a change. And don't let anyone make you feel guilty for making that change. Don't let anyone tell you that you did carnivore wrong, that you weren't eating enough fat, that you weren't eating enough protein. Sure, those things could be true. Maybe you could make tweaks here and there. But ultimately, if it's not working for you, if you can't stick to it, then it's not working and you need to change. And there is a middle ground. You can eat in a way that you feel good, that you can still go out and not be constantly thinking about food and still be getting the results you're after. And that's why now I promote more of a framework versus rigid diet rules. Eat enough protein, be smart about carbs, do movement you enjoy. These are all things that have some flexibility, that you can do a few different ways, that you don't have to be extreme with. My meal building framework starts with 30 to 50 grams of protein, you add healthy fat, then you add fruits and vegetables. This can work if you're eating out, if you're eating at home, if you're cooking a recipe. It can apply to so many different situations. If you're eating out and you're looking through the menu and you're unsure what to get something that has protein as the focus. Maybe swap the French fries for a side salad. Maybe add some avocado as a healthy fat. Bam, you've made a good choice. And finally, I want to touch quickly on the whole mental health aspect of this. Health is not complicated, but restrictive diets, extreme diets, make it feel like it is. Even if the carnivore diet is technically simple, all the hoops you need to jump through in order to maintain it are complicated. When your identity is tied to your diet, you set yourself up for guilt and disappointment. Our diet, what we eat, that's not our identity. That's not the most interesting thing about us. We have so much more to offer. We should be eating in a way that makes us feel good, that gives us good health, and that's easy to maintain. And you can do all of that, trust me. My philosophy prioritizes consistency over perfection. Because if you're striving for perfection, you're gonna fail. Did you have a slice of cake at the party? That's okay, that's life. That doesn't mean you have completely ruined everything and you might as well have a cheat day the whole rest of the day and the next day. Get back on track with your next meal. Prioritize protein, prioritize healthy fat. One slice of cake is not gonna ruin you. One day of eating at Thanksgiving or Christmas, also not gonna ruin you. Look at the big picture. If you have a flexible and guilt-free approach, you're gonna be able to maintain your result and feel good. Food is not gonna be the center point of your entire life, of your identity. Just remember that anytime you see an extreme diet being pushed on social media, it's being pushed because it's extreme, because it's so out there and people are watching it for longer, because people are curious. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's the healthiest choice or it's the best option for you. So the key takeaway here is pretty simple. Yes, carnivore can work, but is it sustainable for everyone? Probably not. It works because it's an elimination diet. But if you're not going to be able to stick to it long term, or if you're eating this way and it feels miserable, it's not for you. Anyone pushing these extremes is doing it for a reason. And there certainly can be a balance here. I'm not saying that everyone who promotes every extreme diet isn't feeling good and seeing the results. But you have to remember that the people who are pushing these diets have made it their identity. That is everything they focus on and everything they think of day in and day out. Do you want that to be you? The truth is, I had to leave that bubble for my own mental health and sanity. I was feeling really trapped and like I couldn't enjoy any time with friends or family. I was that person who was asking what was in the sauces, who was bringing my own food. And let me tell you, that was exhausting. That was miserable. And for what? I was only getting marginally better results eating carnivore than I was eating keto. And now don't even get me started on when I added carbs back into my diet. For those of you who are maybe tuning in for the first time, I also play ice hockey professionally. And when I got back into that, a low carb diet was absolutely not cutting it. I'm saying ice hockey because I play in Australia, but hockey is a high intensity sport. You need fast energy because you're using it so quickly. You need fast energy and you need to replenish it quickly. And for those scenarios, carbs are good. Now, for most people who are not doing high intensity sports, who have some level of metabolic dysfunction, issues with blood sugar, insulin resistance, then yeah, they don't need this quick energy. But again, nuance here. No one size fits all. And I can't tell you how many times I get comments from people saying they do intense sports and they don't need carbs, or look at this person or look at that person. Trust me, I have tried. I was eating a keto or a carnivore diet when I first got back into hockey. And when I started targeting carbs, oh my God, the difference it made to my performance. So stop chasing hot take diets. Stop falling for what influencers are selling. I'm not saying there aren't people who have good information out there. There certainly are. But anytime you see anything that's extreme or new, question why you've never heard of it before. Or question why that person is pushing it. Sure, if you want to give it a try, do that. But if it doesn't work, there's no shame. One person doesn't have all the answers. One person doesn't know your body. You're living through how you're feeling. But anyways, getting a little heated. Hopefully this all made sense and shed a little bit of light on why we see all these extremes online and why I no longer personally follow a carnivore diet or primarily promote it. Like I said, it can have benefits, and I'm not here to tell anyone that it doesn't work, because it does. But if you're not able to stick to it, feel like a broken record at this point, then it's not working. That is a piece of the puzzle. That is a huge piece. But anyways, guys, thank you for tuning in to Healthy Not Complicated. If you're watching on Spotify, make sure to subscribe, and same thing on YouTube if you're watching. And leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you have any hot takes on this topic or if any of this was news to you. I love chatting with you guys in the comment section, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.